But then, you know, like a child having, say, trouble with the inner ear, and then, you know, like the whole world is just like bang, 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 completely confused.
Baj van, és az ugye nagy zavart okozná.
Or they would have a trouble with the surface perception, and you're like, you know, they can't tolerate any touch.
Vagy a felszíni érzékelésével, a felszíni érzékelése baj van, és nem tűri az érintést.
Or, you know, you blow and then the person just throws a fit, you know, becomes aggressive or runs away.
Ráfújsz, és vagy agresszív lesz, vagy elszalad.
So that's kind of this disposition, and on top of this, of course, then you get into the separate line, which would be the genetic predispositions versus the things which were and made, you know, like baked in utero. That would be another component, you know, like hereditary aspect.
Külön azt lehetne, hogy mondjuk a genetikai meghatározottság az minket befolyásol.
So these things are not to be meant, you know, anything that I'm showing is not meant to say, hey, it's easy.
Nem mondanám azt, hogy ez könnyű.
Right? Because in this, because, you know, like you are friends and sitting together, but Ante is walking, right? You know, you can walk, we don't have to carry her around, right? And here you are having...
Barátok, hogy ugye Ante nem sétál.
But she has, but you know, when it moves into this dimension, she has her own set of challenges.
De ezekben a dimenziókban tényleg megvannak a saját kihívásai.
So my whole point, right, with all the demonstrations is actually one simple thing, is that we have, at least we have the tools which provides us some entries.
Bemutatóim, nagyon azt szeretném hangsúlyozni mindig, hogy megvannak az eszközeink arra, hogy
into reversibility. So, and that is, you know, and that's why you get the structural reversibility illustrations as those examples when you see, because, well, that's an impressive thing, because that's a genetically predisposed thing, and then by certain, you know, just external mechanical stimulation, suddenly you see a big change in the, what was supposed to be a pre-printed map of the face, right?
Egyszer mondod, hogy a genetikailag meghatározódnak például az berendezés, hogy csak külső mechanikai behatásokkal át lehetett alakítani.
Bocsánat, csak aki nem látta, készült egy olyan Downos film, Facebookon fönt van, ahol Downos gyerekeknek az arcát gyakorlatilag egy 2 éves munkával teljesen normális arcával rajzolták vissza az ABR eszközeivel. És nem invazívan, tehát teljesen ezzel a finom technikával, nincs vágás, nincs erőszak, semmi. Csak aki ezt nem ismeri.
Ez a Facebook által.
Hát az ABR Facebookon, meg már a honlapon is feltalálkozom.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
On the previous page, you put amongst the problems you put eyeball vision and all with the vestibular system. Do you have exercises in techniques in ABR to address the vestibular system and this whole?
Yeah, I mean, like again, yeah, of course, you know, but it's just the question. It's just.
How do you? I can ask on Thursday. How do you do?
Yeah, but you know, it's the same thing. It's just, you see, because once you start zooming in, you're saying, hey, you know, like the control of the eyeball is the control of the eyeball, right? So you say the control of the eyeball within the orbital, that's one thing. You know, you can get the mechanical input over there, right? On the other hand, you know, this coordination depends on how deep you are in terms of the occipital connections and how stable they are there, right? So at the same time, you also get the transition occipital to the, you know, fascia to the neck fascia, right? So you see all they kind of, they all ping, 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 they get all the contribution to the point.
Okay.
So, you know, of course it's a whole bunch of variables, right? It's a lot of variables,
Változó van.
but my main point is to get the illustrations that
Az, hogy
structural transformations are possible,
tehát a szerkezet, a testfelépítés meg lehet
sensory
változtatni,
transformations are possible,
az érzékelés meg lehet változtatni,
functional transformations are
a
possible.
funkcionalitást is meg lehet változtatni.
Now, the thing is that the individual journey, if you start looking at the number of variables,
Tehát a egyénnek az útja ránézve a változókra,
it's always quite a complex puzzle.
az mindig egy elég komplex kirakós játék.
Within that puzzle you have some kind of the main roads,
Itt
what you
vannak
want
ilyen
to
csapások,
achieve, right? So you see some key balances and main relationships, how it's supposed to be.
itt vannak ilyen fő kapcsolatok, meg egyensúlyok,
But-
amiket ki kell alakítani.
The road out of the jungle could be rather complicated.
De a dzsungelből kivezető út elég összetett lehet.
But that's the whole idea, right? Is that you see, it's like, I'll give you a simple example, right? So you see, if you take a walk from this particular hotel somewhere into this kind of residential area,
Ha most innen a hotelből elsétálsz a környező lakónegyedbe,
there are tons of streets and they kind of change and so on. But right, if you remember, there is a highway which comes here,
kanyargó út van, de ha emléksz, sok kanyargós is utcás van, de ha emlékszel rá, hogy itt lent van egy ilyen nagy autópálya, ami is jön a hotelhez,
you're never going to get lost, right?
akkor soha nem fogsz igazán eltévedni.
If you know where is the highway, so one way you will, another, sometimes you can, hit a dead end, then you come back and so on, but eventually you get close and you get more towards, right?
Utcába, vagy elterelnek valami, de előbb-utóbb eljutsz a strádához.
The same is, the main advice to people lost in the jungle, right? So you see, find the river, right?
Ugye, akik eltévednek a dzsungelben, azoknak is az a fő tanács, amikor azon aztán, hogy találjuk egy folyót.
So in this kind of sensory and all this kind of behavioral and all this kind of jungle,
Ebben a dzsungelben is, amit fölrajzolt,
that's the idea that, there's some basic relationships, right? So you see which are improving the sensory, physical and the functional outputs, and that's what you just, keep working towards, and then gradually
tudjuk, hogy miket fejlesztenek,
the
és
balance
azon
changes.
dolgozunk, és ezt fejleszteni fog.
sometimes you get lucky breaks, sometimes you get unlucky breaks.
Valamikor gyorsabban, szerencsésebb módon, valamikor lassabban.
And that's how it moves. So
Ez úgy működik.
again, the idea is to show that it's actually that we have the opportunity to get the elementary reversibility, right? And that's where
Az a fontos, hogy van lehetőségünk visszafordítani a dolgokat.
it's important to understand, because otherwise you see, like, people get compartmentalized in their particular conditions. Say, oh, like this is a different age, this is the different type, this is a different whatever. No,
Az emberek
that's not
mind a
me.
különálló esetként nézik a magukét, mert egy egyes eseteket, úgyhogy ez máskorú, ez más állapotú.
But that's the idea. You can learn a lot from the kids with the, genetic disorders. You can learn a lot from the
tanulni egy csomót a genetikai
experiences, with the children affected by autism. You can get a lot from, more severe and mild. Each of those, they give you some kind of
enyhébb
insight and say, okay, this is changeable.
De fontos, hogy ezek mind változtathatók.
Have you ever seen, it's a completely different case, a different thing, but have you ever seen children who are shorter because of all the problems they have? Once you resolve this problem, even after the age of normal growth, that they lengthen in height?
To a certain extent, yes.
Tehát látok olyat, hogy megnőttek a gyerekek azután, hogy javult a helyzetük, akkor is már a növekedési kort túlér.
But once again, there is nothing mysterious to it, right? Because if you look at the,
Semmi titokzatos nincsen.
if you look at the say, vertebral column, right? So you see that's
Nézzük
a
a gerincoszlopot.
vertebra disc, right? Vertebra disc, right? So, and then what we have is that in all
Olyan porcporunk.
the kids, by that time that they complete, seemingly complete the growth, what
Akkor
you
befejeződik a növekedés. a
see is that those discs, they are very dehydrated and very kind of shrunk, right? So you see there.
Lemezekkel nagyon kiszáradtak és gyötre vannak zsugorodva.
So you would also see that there is even the vertebrae itself is like much whiter, means it's a lot more mineralized than in the healthy child of the same age.
Sokkal fehérebbek a csigolyák, mint más gyerekeknek.
Well, you see, it's a question mark, when it comes to the vertebral bodies, but the vertebral discs, they obviously provide you with a lot more of the tangible thing, right? And if you gain a couple of millimeters.
A korongok
Can you
azok
gain
sok
on the legs and
lehetőséget
the arms
nyújtanak.
like this? The girl here that she has seemingly like the head is bigger and the arms and the legs are shorter.
So, again, depends, right? So you see, this depends, and then the same story. You look at the joint, right? So you see there is the epiphysis, epiphysis, yes, the epiphysis, yes. So you see, therefore, there, you also have the different components of growth within. But
So possibly on the joints.
possible. But the main thing, still, right? So you see, the main point is that you see even among the healthy people, there are people who are tall, who are short legs and long legs and so on. So the main point is that
Az egészséges embereknek is van, hogy valakinek hosszabb a keze, hosszabb a lába, alacsonyabb, magasabb.
how well is it capable of supporting the rest?
De a
See,
lényeg, hogy hogyan
what
tudják
kind of
támogatni,
connections you can
szolgálni a többi.
link into it. It's not about the absolute size,
Kapcsolódok, és nem pedig a méret önmagában.
but more about, let's call it the functional size.
I was just curious.
Yeah,
Have you seen
Yeah. So, yes.
Keresem azt, hogyha időben képes elkezdjük az ABR terápiát, és ugye 4-es stádium.
Talking about the 2 years old level 4 kid.
Ezek a deformációk, ezek elkerülhetőek, amilyen pici korban.
The deformations could be avoided if they start working at such an early age.
Well, you see, once again, you get better, obviously you get better opportunities, right, in that sense.
Sokkal jobb lehetőségek vannak ebben a tekintetben.
But,
De nem
De.
yeah, that's kind of a that's naturally the situation, but still we have to understand this thing is that you
Meg kell
just
értenünk azt a dolgot, hogy
have to realize the value and the total extent of a loss, right? So you see of the active elements, right? Because what is my central point, right? My central point is this, that what we are facing is not so much the brain injury itself, right? But the collateral damage to the rest of the body, right? So you see that all this
itt az, hogy nem maga az agycsőrés ugye az, ami számít, hanem a
all this
testezért
kind of
játékos
finer connections and all the fascia things and all the links that are there, so that most of them, like the 3D printers, if I find, like anything here, this, where's the fascia part? I don't know where's the fascia part. Let me see. Oops, not that one.
Múltkor végigmondtál?
Mindig átugorja a csomó, mindig más látsz, ugyanazok a diákkal. Mindig más
Mint hogy 180 hosszú, vagy?
17-esen ezért.
Hát 3 év, igen. És a
you know, the conversation goes that when it comes, you know, you see, look, if you look at the circumstances of what happened, right?
Nézzük annak azokat a körülményeket, hogy mi történik.
A more or less typical scenario, right? The typical story.
Tipikus történet következő.
So the brain injury, either the child has been premature, right?
Tehát ugye az agymegsérülés tekintetében vagy koraszülés van általában,
You've got a brain injury at birth,
vagy születéskor van egy
which then translates into then anywhere from several days to several weeks into this kind of incubators and all this kind of saving things. So, and what we end up with is that if you look at the pregnancy as this 9 months long 3D printing process, right?
3 hónapig, ugye 9 hónapig 3D-ben nyomtatják a gyereket.
You've seen that, you know, you've seen how the 3D printers work, right? Like bzz, 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 bzz.
3D-s nyomtató.
Little by little, right?
Apránként.
And it's, you know, especially now they get faster, but it's quite boring to observe. You can see, you know, if you sit near the 3D printer, you know, it could be days before it produces something that little, right?
Napokkal is beletehetnek, még egy ilyen apróságot megcsinálni.
But if you think about it, what this 3D printing does, it does the fine balance between all the elements, and then within, you know, like smallest centimeters or millimeters, you've got lots of things packed in.
Igen, a legkisebb 3D-s nyomtatóban is egy centiben nagyon sok réteg kapcsolódik össze.
Think of the modern day computer chip, right?
Mint a mai modern
Like, I mean, what you have in the watch or the phone. You know, it's a thing which is like maybe 2 millimeters thick, but you've got like 15 layers there.
2 mm vastag, de 15 réteg.
Each has own circuitry and all these connections and so on.
Azon, amin belül saját áramkörök van.
You know, you step on it,
Ránéz,
you look at it, nothing changed.
nem változott semmi, ugyan ránéz
But that
rá.
internal mealy structure got destroyed. Doesn't work.
A méretű struktúra az megsérül.
So the same thing here, you know, as the child has been developing from, you know,
Ez történik, amikor a gyerek fejlődik.
just to realize that, you know, the 3D printing goes from a single cell, you know, to
Tehát itt ugye egy sejtből indul ki ez a 3D-s nyomtatás,
several trillions, you know.
amiből sok milliárd sejt készült.
And that is a, you know, it's just to appreciate the magnitude of this process.
Csak hogy érzékeljük ennek a folyamatnak a nagyságrendjét.
And then this fine 3D print,
És akkor ez a finom 3D-s nyomtatott
you got the birth, you know, where everything is nicely connected, and when everything has its map and position and, you know, linked to all the other friends and so on.
is össze van kapcsolva.
So then this thing goes into the brain injury, right? So it's a brain injury, what it means that on the one hand, the brain itself, when it's,
Akkor jön
you know,
ez az úgynevezett agysérülés, ami egyrészt azt jelenti, hogy maga
when it has this vascular accident, everything shuts down.
emi miatt az egész agy gyakorlatilag leáll egy időre.
On the other hand, then you have this kind of intensive care process when, you know, the child just like fights for life, right?
Utána ez az intenzíven töltött időszak, amikor a gyerek igazából az életéért küzd.
What does it mean?
Mit jelent ez?
It means that during this process, most of the functions, or like whatever is too expensive to run, gets switched off, right? So the child just tries to and recruits everything just to provide sufficient respiration.
Azt jelenti, hogy igazából minden addig végzett folyamatban elő folyamat leáll, és csak azért küzd a gyerek, hogy megfelelően tudjon élegezni.
Then the emergency phase is off, but what happened?
De véget ér ez a vészhelyzet egyszer, de mi történt?
Most of your 3D print is lost.
Tehát a 3D-s nyomtatott képnek a nagy része elveszik.
You know, I bring this example, right? Is that if you combine, I don't know,
nézzük azt a példát, hogyha
an earthquake,
kombináljuk a földrengést,
power blackout,
áramszünetet,
and probably a tsunami, and
még egy özönvízt is, vagy szökőára,
a little bit and a couple of fires, right? So you see then,
tűzesettel.
that's what this does to the rest of the body, right? So you see you have the city, and then boom. So then, the fires are off, the tsunami is off, the earthquake is over.
Szokó, szökőár vége a földrengésnek.
Now you have to get back.
Most vissza kéne térni a mindennapi élethez.
Like I said, bzz, bzz, some life here, bzz, bzz, some life there, and then, the city starts kind of rebuilding.
És apránként elkezd épülni a város.
But take an example of the, one of my favorite example is the example of the road junctions,
Vagy de nézzük a kedvencemet, a út közlekedési csomópontokat.
See, you look at these ligaments.
Nézzük ezeket a szalagokat.
You see, they're all different layers, all different things and so on, but it's like that thick.
Mindegyik különböző rétegű és ilyen vastagok kb.
You see, these guys are going here, these guys are going here, 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 here.
Ide mennek, azok meg amoda.
And each of them guides a particular set of muscles.
És mindegyik vezet irányít egy adag izmot.
Now, boom, you get a collapse.
És aztán hopp, egyszer csak összeomlik.
You don't have the heavy traffic in Hungary, but you can visualize, those, highways with exits, right? You take some American examples, right? Like they kind of, the Chinese ones, right? They have like 10 layers of going left, right, exit, here, here, there.
Sok emeletes közlekedési csomópontok is vannak.
So what was the road junction then after an earthquake?
Ez
Boom,
hogy néz ki földrengés után?
gets flat.
Kilapul.
So before the traffic was directed here, there, turning around, going towards the legs, going up, going to the front, and so. Now all this is blended together.
Most ez mind össze van keverve.
So what is the thing? Well,
Mi a helyzet?
instead of increasing the traffic, try to focus on rebuilding the actual
Ahelyett, hogy növeljük a
Junctions.
forgalmat, építsük újra az útkereszteződést.
So that's really the very simple idea.
Ez az egyszerű gondolat, hanem
Then that's where we zoom in into this level and start, this rebuilding process and try to make it in,
részletekbe, és kezdjük el ezt az újraépítést.
try to make this process as productive as possible. And of course, when the child is younger, right, you get more of this, opportunities.
Amikor a gyerek kisebb, akkor sokkal több.
and your options for lucky breaks are greater. But
És nagyobb az esélyek, a szerencsék arra, hogy jó lapot húzunk.
But you see, still, you have to take into account all these factors, right?
De ezeket a tényezőket, ezeket így figyelembe kell mind venni.
All this, like the lists, and I can make another list and
És még hívhatnék
another list, right?
több listát.
So, but that's just the complexity of the thing. But on the other hand, what I'm saying is that
Ez a komplexitása a dolog, de másrésztről, amit mondok,
if we look at it from a fundamental standpoint, if you start getting the consistent work and then start looking at, like that frame of the day, optimize your 1,000 minutes and start building it through, then you
következetesen beosztod és optimalizálod az idődet,
build that freedom, right? To the point when you can get a child who's living
elérheted azt a szabadságot, hogy az a gyerek, aki
quite happily.
a gyerek az boldogan.
And again, the main ingredients of happiness are the visceral, emotional, and mental freedoms. That this kind of personality expressions and the thing that they don't translate with they don't end up with the positional and bodily conflicts.
Hogy ne kerüljön a helyzet és a...
That's the basis on which you can build. So that's really quite a simple
Tehát ez az alapja a
message in that sense.
szépíteni, ez egy egyszerű üzenet.
But you see, this is my straightforward point, is that it's like, if you look at this, this is all real, right? This is the real stuff that we all have.
Tehát ha mondani akarok, még ez mi itt van, ez egy valódi dolog, ez mindannyiunknak van.
So, and if we want the control of the legs, if we want the sitting and so on, we need to rebuild this background
Ha
thing.
akarjuk irányítani a lábunkat és a többit, akkor ezeket újra kell építeni.
And what is ABR in that sense? ABR is the way how to activate and make, do the exercises for this kind of
Mi
things.
az ABR? Tehát aktiváljuk ezeket a dolgokat.
Because that's the question that, I
Ez a
asked when
kérdés,
we were talking 2 days ago, right? It's
amikor
like
beszéltünk 2 nap.
everybody understands the exercise about jumping up, flailing the arms, or like doing the squats.
Mindenki ismeri a guggolás, vagy a mindenféle tornagyakorlatoknak.
But then if I ask a simple question, can you move your third thoracic vertebra?
Ha megkérdezem, hogy a harmadik háti csigolyádat tudod-e mozgatni,
Well, the first question, where is it, right?
akkor ugye az első
What are you talking
hol
about?
is van az, és miről beszélsz.
But this is all these things, right? So you see, can you move your, 10th costovertebral joint on the right?
Tehát tudod-e mondjuk a 10. valamelyik csigolyádat ide-oda jobbra mozgatni?
No, you cannot willingly move it selectively.
Akaratlagossan nem tudod mozgatni.
But it's there,
De ott van.
it's there, and it has a big impact on how you move and operate and so on.
Hogyan tudsz mozogni.
So that's my point, that there's the whole gap between the surgery, which kind of cuts things into pieces, and the functional training.
Nagy szakadék van a sebészet és a funkcionális tréning között.
That operates on the level like placing the total body in the fake straight position and sort of practicing the standing.
Meg ugye ilyen állítógépekbe bele kényszerít.
So that's where we are, right? So you're looking at just zooming in, looking at the nuances and asking the question,
Amit mi csinálunk, hogy megnézzük a részleteket és megkérdezzük a kérdéseket.
if you can't move your fifth rib, or if you can't move your whatever second lumbar vertebra,
Nem tudod mozgatni adott bordádat vagy csigolyádat, akkor
it doesn't mean that they don't have the role, right?
az nem azt jelenti, hogy nincs szerepük.
So they are, that's the fabric on which your total higher levels of movements are based. And if you don't have the right connections there, then the only solution that the brain has is to use the most superficial muscles because they are the most responsive.
És van, amikor nincs más választás, mint a legfelsőbb izmokat, legkülsőbb izmokat használja, a legfelsőbb réteget, mert azokat tudja legjobban irányítani.
So once again, these are not, the hamstrings or whatever, they're doctors. They're not the bad guys,
Tehát itt is ugye a térthajlító vagy a combközelítő izmok, ők nem rosszak.
Just the brain calls to the pelvis and say, hey, after the earthquake, who is there?
Ugye az agy fölhívja a medencét a földrengés után, hogy ki van ott valaki,
And then he said, I am the hamstring.
és akkor a medencéje csak a hamstring válaszol, a térthajlító izom.
So, okay, you're gonna do 3 jobs,
Jó, akkor most ezen túl 3 dolgot kell csinálni.
Says, hey, Mr. Brain, look how, I'm not designed for this. I don't have the right sensors.
Mondhatja, hogy hát ő ezt nem tudja, nincsenek szenzorai hozzá.
I don't even, I go behind the knee and end up below, and say, why do you want me to move this leg?